West and Dale Ross with the Jim and Dale show. We're just going to talk a little bit about the last 9 weeks of the season, and we're going to talk a little bit about Week 10. This is the next to the last regular season week. Dale, this season just flown by.
Very fast. I'm sorry, I am here, folks. I'm trying to find a file. Jim, I got something here I thought we could take a look at. I'm gonna wait till a few people come online.
Okay.
Friday night, I was at the Providence. I was at Providence Day for the Charlotte Christian game, and there was a play in the game that was real close. And I'm not faulting the officials, but I wanted to bring this play up and just explains the closeness of it and one of the issues I think that people or officials face and maybe fans don't recognize. So if you got anything you want to talk about for just a moment, go ahead. I'm going to navigate to this file I'm looking for.
I'll chat a little bit. The one thing this week, and it just happened the last day or two, the weather's gotten colder. And sometimes you see better football with the colder weather. Sometimes you see players are just not used to it as much as others. A lot of times the weather has a lot to do with adjustments. To me, it's like a carburetor. A car goes faster when it's colder outside than it does when it's hotter. And I think a lot of times the same carburetor inside these players, they tend to be a little bit more fueled come the colder weather. But not every player, on each team, every team has the same, same situation. Dale, have you recognized that also in the past?
Yeah, people adapt, especially to environmental changes differently. And even though they may face them as players, for example, year in and year or over several years, we're talking about for high school, I think it has an impact, both positively for some and maybe negatively for some. I think one of the positives is that it's a trigger that you're really, you're getting to the serious point of the season in football. Um, the thing that I have noticed, Jim, is it's come about usually. I recognize this coldness that we're feeling today about Halloween. So we're a couple of weeks early for these 30s temperatures. So it's going to, I think it'll be interesting to see how it applies because usually we see this as we're rolling into the playoffs or, finishing the season and rolling into the playoffs. So
I agree. It kind of felt like a Thanksgiving Thursday almost, or the day after Thanksgiving. Usually that's when I really feel it. Usually it's like the second week or so, or the playoffs. So, and now it's actually about the third or fourth week because we start the playoffs about a week early.
Exactly. And, right.
And we associate Thanksgiving with cold football. It's very rare do I actually go to a football game on Thanksgiving where it's warm outside. And when I do, I'm very appreciative. I like warmer weather. I will not deny that.
But yeah, that's especially the older that we get, the more we feel this stuff. But yeah, I guess one of the games that I've gone to a number of times in the past has been the Independence Butler game, which is usually the last game of the regular season. It's usually right there, and it is again this year. And I just recognize that at many of those games, it was cool, very cool. About like actually not as cold as what we're feeling right now, but cooler than what we would normally feel right now. So I think this is going to be an interesting trigger for me Friday night as to how I respond. I do know that it's going to amp up how I feel.
Exactly.
we've got 5 people online here, Jim. So what I want to do is I wanted to show something. I posted this on our Facebook page, and this is about, and I had it up, didn't I already? I was kind of previewing it before we got online. There was a play in the Providence Day Charlotte Christian game, and there were a couple of plays that are questionable. And this game was a highly competitive game. It was a highly competitive game also with high level of competition, meaning great players. There are great players on both sides of the ball here. In no situation of an official's call do I think an official's call cost anybody the game. I want to make that clear. Something I've been on about for several years is the number of officials that we have. We have 5 on the field. And I'm not going to say our level of athletes are college level all the time, but this particular game, much like the Providence Day Charlotte Catholic game, featured a lot of Division I players, future Division I players. So very athletic players, very fast, very big, very strong. I mean, all the attributes that make for a great game, but also can make it difficult to know how does a big, strong player make it difficult for an official to know the right, be able to see the right calls. Well, since you don't have officials in all the areas, it's hard to see what a lineman is actually doing. And with these bigger linemen and stronger linemen being able to sometimes to just dominate another player and pancake them like no other pancakes we've seen, it might look like a hold when it really isn't, a tackle. So I wanted to show this one play. This was at a critical point in the game. Providence Day had already, in many ways, done things that I think cost them the game. I think they lost the game, not in this fourth quarter play, but in their entire second quarter play. In the second quarter, the players kind of went flat as if, because they jumped up 20-0, and I think they felt like it was going to be too easy. And the Charlotte Christian players never gave up. They continued to fight and play and just do all the things that you want to see. And they had good players. And in this game, Charlotte Christian came back twice from 20 points down. So here's the play. It was at a critical point in the game. Ken did post a copy of this, so it's going to mute the mics. The play's it's just going to be a short part of the play, and then it's going to be followed up with a slow-mo, and then I'll explain what you saw.
Okay.
Okay. It was ruled a fumble. And I remember right after it happened, the person standing beside me, and they were like, that wasn't a fumble. And my response was, I don't know. As you could see, I had a very, very good view of the play. But I told him, I don't know. And then I played it back on my phone. Now I'm looking at the small screen, and I told the person, I said, well, it maybe was an incomplete pass, but really until I get to the computer and look at it, I'm not going to know. And I'm mentioning this, Jim, because as you can see, things happen very quickly. And that's not me with that noise, is it? Did you hear that noise?
I hear something. I don't know exactly what that is.
It's not bad. I just wanted to make certain it
Yeah,
was
just
me. I thought something.
it's like a like I don't know, a little static noise or something.
So this play, the quarterback did two things. And one of those things, don't confuse as part of his motion to throw. And one of those things that he did is he turned to his left and he lifted his arm up. Now, it's not a throw until he starts going forward. So he lifted his arm up and turned, to get in that position to throw. And then he threw. As you saw, the lineman was coming in very fast. So I timed this, Jim. And from the point of no throw to a throw was one frame of my video. My video was capturing at 24 frames a second. The amount of time to completely see a fumble took less than 2 frames because by the time I got to the second frame, the ball was already deflecting away. Before it was a throw, I estimate that the rusher's hand was no more than 24 inches away from the ball. And 2 frames is half the amount of time your eyes, when your eyes do your normal blinks, your eyes stay closed for approximately 400 to 800 milliseconds. And those 2 frames occurred in less time that your eyes were closed than a blink. So that's how fast it went from he would be a clear sack. Let's say he would have been hit and ball fumble to he's actually in a throwing motion.
Right.
That's how close that was. The official that's going to make that call is the white hat. He is behind the quarterback and usually off to the side a little bit. The white hat's going to be looking through the quarterback's back. Can you hear me still? Okay, yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
he's going to be looking through his back and arm, and it's going to be very difficult for him to determine where the lineman's hand is at on that ball. And there's no the other officials are looking at other things. We only have 5 officials, so there's only 4 other officials. One's got to watch the line. You've got 2 wing officials that are watching the line and the receivers that are going out. You have a back judge. So you really don't have enough officials on the field to even begin to come close to making this call. And if this were in a college game, it would have been a reviewed play, no matter
Right.
which way the call went. If it had been called an incomplete pass, I would have I'd have thrown the flag to get a review. Inside of 2 minutes, it's going to be, automatically reviewed. So I just wanted to use this play to point out these officials were good officials. We were not given some inadequate or new or old officials that couldn't get up and down the field. They were seasoned officials. They moved on the field very well. We didn't have any of, some things I've seen in games this season. I think it was a very good officiating crew. I don't know if there's any comments, if anybody saw that, if they made any comments, they did not. What did you think in what you saw?
I mean, I thought it was a incomplete pass, to be honest with you. But the thing, it brings up two different things I wanted to mention. One of them is hindsight's always 2020, unless if you're cross-eyed, then it's 40-40. Uh, Everybody makes mistakes, and officials, the margin of error is so thin with these. And like you said, I mean, 1/10 of a second is a difference between maybe a fumble, less than a tenth of a second difference between a fumble or an incomplete pass. And even in slow motion, you're going to have people have two different answers. A lot of times, just basically on whether they have a bias or not. One team that was throwing the pass is going to say incomplete pass. The other one's like, oh, that was clearly a fumble.
Right.
But the second one I wanted to mention is the idea. I've had a lot of people say, well, we should have instant replay in high school. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, high schools are there to graduate or to educate our students. They don't have enough money right now as it is they're not fully funded right now. And you're going to ask for all this equipment that's to do replay. No, I can see it in the championship game when you're at Keenan or at over at Carter Finley or over at Wallace Wade. But unless you have that already there, you cannot make the schools do it. And right now, I don't know about you, Dale, there's very few schools that I go to that have a 40-second clock.
Right.
Most of them still have the 25-second clock from many years back. Not many years. It was been about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, there's so many issues here. If you if we did replay for plays like this, every school, in my opinion, we couldn't do it in the regular season or in playoffs, except for the championship game, until every school was able to have the same number of cameras, same placement. And where's that money going to come from? So the only place that can legitimately be done, I think, before we put in instant replay for, or let's say reviews, we go to 7 officials first. 7 officials there's two things. 7 officials, but maybe even before 7 officials, pay officials more so we can get more, we can make it worthwhile for officials to come in and be part of the game.
Yeah, increase the demand a little bit.
Exactly.
I mean, these guys, they barely, after their expenses, they barely get any. They might be able to buy a Mountain Dew and a slice of pizza after the game. But
and then of course they get abused for the entire time that they're there from the fans and the parents. So
the thing about it, there's so many judgment calls. I don't know if you saw the Duke Carolina game. 16 seconds left. The receiver looks like he got bounced in. It looked like he reestablished his position inside, and he catches the ball. And there wasn't probably more than a blade of grass between his foot and the out of bounds line, if that much. I mean, it was right there against it. And if you had to make that in real time, I'm going to tell you right now, 50% of the fans are going to be really upset with you, and 50% of the fans are just going to be happy. They're not going to think twice about you. Refs are the most abused things they are. If you get the call right, well, you're supposed to. If you get it wrong, you're a bum. So
exactly. Some of these plays, like what you mentioned there, a player when a player's running and a player's foot goes down, and let's say it's right at the line, it's just so hard. You got to magnify in to see, is it because all he's got to do is touch the line, just barely touch the line. Well, the amount of time that a foot is on the ground during a sprint, you cannot see in real time. Your mind, the best thing an official can have going for him is it's on a grass field and he could go look at the footprint and see if there was a footprint. It's just, we're talking,
Marcus.
Jim, we're talking the amount of time that I was just discussing with that pass or less because you
Right.
got feet moving, So if you're in a full sprint, and I see so many plays that the foot goes so close because it's kick returns, it's very common, or punt returns. If a player's heading to the edge, trying to run to the edge as much as he can to get upfield, and then he makes his cut, and he tries to make his cut short of the sideline, but he's right on it. And that stuff happens so fast that unless he makes a couple of steps that are out of bounds or right on that line, it's too hard of a call.
Right.
All these plays, when they say bang, bang, we are talking bang, bang. I don't know if people understand how short of a time 100 milliseconds is, 1/10
Oh,
of a second.
exactly. There's a lack of self awareness, I think, with a lot of people that complain about this. It's so easy to blame the refs that your team lost a point or lost a possession or whatever. But then you try to actually tell them to put themselves in their shoes, and you're like, well, they get paid to be right. I don't. I
Right.
mean, they don't get paid much of anything, to be honest with you. I
Now,
mean, just very myopic.
in the context of the game time itself, nobody got overly upset. There was a lot of question, uh,
Right.
but I was rather surprised at how, I'm not going to say calm, it was handled by the Providence Day fans and coaching staff. But I know many coaches that I've watched over the years would have been out at midfield. They'd have been out on the field, if it was old Easy Smith, for example.
Oh, he'd have Van Gogh'd somebody. You know what Van Gogh is, don't you? Someone's ear been
Yes,
bit off.
yes, exactly. Yes, I do. Um, so it was rather impressive actually, and I do want to make one more comment. After the game, I kind of hurt myself by not going down to the Charlotte Christian huddle and in taking part of that enjoyment that they had. Um, I wanted to hear what Chad had to say, so I went to their huddle, and it was very impressive to hear how he took ownership of the loss and
Right.
told his
I would not
players
expect
not.
anything different from him either.
Well,
He's a stand-up guy.
it was pretty impressive. So I wanted to show that play. We all need to remember that when a player goes up to deflect a pass and everything looks good, but you think he got there a little too early and you think it's not a clear interference, but again, it's that 50-50 thing, like you mentioned. This stuff happens so fast, and officials in high school are not always in the best angles because of having two fewer to be able to see this stuff. So,
There we go.
okay.
It's
So I saw a Providence Day go down. What did you see Friday night?
I saw Eastern Alamance just whip up on Person. It was 35-0 at halftime, and I just looked at the Eastern Alamance guys. It looked like they were ready to just walk up. Could probably fly. And Person County is not a bad team. They have talents. They have size. They have stamina. They have athletes, but they had nothing against Eastern Alamance. Eastern Alamance could stop them on defense, and they could run all over them. They could, exploit their secondary. Had everything to do with confidence. And Eastern Alamance special team. They're not necessarily big. They are fast. They are deep. They are talented, but they're overachieving. I mean, or I shouldn't say overachieving. They're Coach Kirby's getting about as much as he can out of those guys, and you can tell they have bought into his system.
Right. Cool. Right. Let's not spend too much time on it, but Jim, you want to bring up the insane rankings, and we'll just take a quick look at them. I didn't do any graphics this week.
I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's see how I'm going to do this. I did not. See what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy the. I'm going to make a couple of screenshots real quick,
Okay.
and then I'll share my screen.
All right.
So you got my first screenshot here, and let me get another one. Did 1A, 2A. Now I'm going to get to 3A, 4A.
And I did get my spreadsheet finally open, so we'll be able to look at the projections a little bit.
So, all right. So let me share my screen.
And what I thought we'd do, Jim, is just go quickly over these insane rankings, and then maybe quickly pull up what the Max Preps power rankings look like after. And
okay.
not belabor it, because we got a lot of other things we want to talk about. So go ahead and share your screen.
So can you see my screen yet?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Just brought it up.
Well, I'll tell you what, since 2A's top, we're going to do 2A, then 1A, then I'll do 4A, 3A. 2A, I'm going to tell you right now, 1 through 6, just throw those names in a hat and pick them. You're not going to go wrong with that. Wallace, Rose Hill, Reedsville, Monroe, Burns, Chase, East Surrey. Those are the top 6 teams. There's a lot of parity in 2A. Salisbury is just right under there, and Shelby is the unknown. You can put a big old X on there. And I'll put the X on there just because I can't do it. It's kind of hard to do it. I didn't do too bad.
You did pretty good. Yeah.
They're 5-3. They've lost 3 games during the season. They've lost to Kings Mountain. They went crying back to their mamas after losing to Crest, and then they got pretty much beaten up by AC Reynolds. But
so upper classification, let's make us change that. Not just larger classification schools, but all powers in their own right in those classifications.
Right, exactly. So what? I'll make that better. But I feel like John Madden here. Of course, I don't have a telestrator to do this, but these 6 teams right here, they're the best. Salisbury is just right under there, but I'll tell you what, they have the athleticism. Maiden, East, Duplin, I'm not in love with those guys. I mean, they have a lot more to show to me to make me put up there. So there's some honorable mentions here. I finally put Forest Hills and J.M. Robinson, and Green Central was in the top 10. They went out, and East Duplin took their place. Yeah, these teams, they could be right up there. They're 9 and 10.
Right. So just looking at that, Burns, Chase, and Shelby, buddy, there's some good football over there.
Oh, exactly. And if you look at this, well, let's look at this. Western part of the state, western part of the state, western part of the state. Excuse me, Wallace Rose Hill's east, Reedsville's west, Monroe's west, Burns west, Chase is west, East Surrey's west, Salisbury's west, Shelby's west, Maiden west.
Yep.
The west is just loaded, and I think Wallace Rose Hill is going to will come out of the east, and to me that makes them number 1 right there. They have the easiest way to get into the state championship. But the west is just loaded. Now let's look at 1A. Same thing you got here. You got a team from the east, Tarboro, and then you go down here. You got North Moore. That's from the east. You go a little bit further. You got Northampton County, and that's it. I do have Riverside Martin from the west that's in here, but right now Tarboro's regional to lose on that. And I do have them ranked 1. I think there is a fairly good sizable separation between Tarboro and Andrews and Mount Airy. They're kind of rolled up there together. East Randolph is kind of there, maybe just a little bit below, and then North Moore is just a little bit below Eastern Randolph. Drawn is good. I mean, they have really surprised people. They've beaten Mitchell, they've beaten Mountain Heritage, and they have a very, very solid team. Murphy. Who would have thought Murphy would have beaten Robbinsville by, I think it was something like 48-14.
Big time, yeah.
Big time. And I had to move Murphy up. I mean, they weren't in the top 10. Robbinsville, I think they were like second. And after that, I knew Robbinsville was banged up. but I still thought with them being banged up, they'd have done better. Uh, so I got them down here. But right now, Tarboro is my favorite. The out of the east, out of the west, just wide open.
Yep.
So to what I'm gonna take this off, and I'm gonna go over to the east. So you got 4A. I'll start with 4A again. East Forsyth. I mean, they do everything they need to. They keep on winning.
Yep.
New Bern's the best team out of the East. I think the closest team out east to New Bern would be Hillside and Cardinal Gibbons and Cleveland. Those three teams. But the West is again loaded. You got Chambers, you got Grimsley, and you got East Forsyth. I do think Chambers and East Forsyth. I think East Forsyth is clearly better than Chambers, but you just never know. Chambers, I think, did they have to play Mallard Creek? Is that right?
Yeah,
I think they have Mallard.
I favor Mallard Creek in that game.
If Mallard Creek wins that, I'm gonna tell you right now, what Mallard Creek wins that conference.
Yeah, it's their conference to lose right now, or not lose, but Mallard Creek's in the position of, even if they lose to Chambers, they'll be in a 3-way tie, and they could still come out as the number one. I think personally, I think they're better than Huff for sure. I mean, they beat Huff, and there was no flukeness about that. So that's my differences. Is I would move Mallard Creek up.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of tough for me, just because I don't know. It's just like I'm gonna say right now, probably 4 through 10. It's like you could just throw them in there and pick their name out of the hat, and I wouldn't make people mad.
I think it's actually at least 3 through 10, and maybe 2 through, maybe even 2 through 10. I'm high on New Bern. I don't, but it's kind of like another team that you've got there on the bubble, Olympic. I need to, for Olympic to be even on this bubble here of being in the top 10, they got to have a real good showing against Ardrey Kell, because their schedule is very, very weak. And I'm high on Butler too. I think Butler might be better than Chambers, Huff, and Mallard Creek.
The thing about it is, I was like, I want Butler to be in the top 10, but who do you take out? And I came close to pulling out Cleveland, but Cleveland, so help me, they're a very solid team. I mean, it's just
right.
They scare me come the playoffs. I could see them winning, shocking New Bern and beating them. I also could see New Bern beating them by 35 points. So,
well, here's the fact about 4A. You can go down to 25, 30 with competitive teams and potentially competitive games with a bunch of them. Meaning maybe no more than a 2-score difference between the top of that and down towards the bottom of it. Not something we would have seen in previous years, where the top 4, 5 were like just super powerful teams. So it's hard to pick 4A, I think, this year.
Now, in 3A, I'll tell you right now, I was thinking about owning a vineyard. I was thinking about having several different locations, one over in Cleveland County and one over in South Point or Belmont, because I have more winers come from those two areas than any other place in the state. They're like always complaining, South Point, why do you have them ranked 5? Shelby, they're only 8th in the 2A. They should be number 1. Where's Creston here? You know what? Show me a team that Crest has beaten in the 3A or 4A that's a very impressive win. I mean, I just need more information on that. And they have to play. If they beat Kings Mountain, obviously they're going to shoot up in the top 10 easily. But I just don't have anything right now for them. It's
Right.
hard to tell, but Kings Mountain to me is the clear favorites. Again, let's look at this West. Kings Mountain's West. East Lincoln's West. South Point's West. Dudley's West. Oak Grove's West. Um, in the East, you got Smithville, Selma, Rose, Eastern Alamance, 71st, and Northern Nash. So I think that's the only 3A is the only one where there's a lot of parity between East and West. But again, the top two teams in the West, look at that: Kings Mountain, East Lincoln. Kings Mountain, though, to me, is the best team. Uh,
Right.
out of the East is really going to be the excitement. Is it going to be Northern Nash? It's going to be 71st. Does Eastern Alamance have anything to say about it? And let's don't forget about these two guys here, Rose and Selma, Smithville, Selma. I'll still consider Havelock. I always think Havelock is dangerous this time of year. Ledford barely lost at Grove, so got to give them a shout. North Brunswick, I think, is undefeated. Tuscola is undefeated. I think West Henderson is undefeated.
They are.
So some really good things here. Dale, what's your thoughts about the 3As?
I think 3A is a huge battle, a huge battlefield. As you get down below the 10, there may be. I'm not even going to talk about how teams are ranked. I might do a few of them slightly different. I just know that from 1 through, again, this is another one of those classifications that you get down into the 20s, you're still looking at good teams, good squads. Uh, who thinks that going up to Tuscola to play is going to be an easy thing? For example,
Go to
Ledford,
Watauga.
you know,
Go to Watauga in 4A.
yep.
I mean, that's
I bet
you're
it's
just asking for problems.
I bet it's real cold up there Friday night.
Oh, I'm sure it is. And teams like you'll have Nail Brown go up to the mountains, and they come back, and they have to plan for next season.
the
So
the biggest thing is that as we look at these mountain teams, um, when they have to play teams from the foothills, Piedmont area, you're in the playoffs. They don't seem to fare too well in the upper class. I'm talking about 4A and 3A. So while we're talking about this, I wanted to, Jim, maybe it's a good point to maybe not yet talk about the projections. It's possible that we might have a couple of people join us. Cameron said he might join this evening. He's doing some kind of hosting for he does he reports. He's got a blog on the Charlotte 49ers football.
okay,
He's doing something with that. Uh,
let's
I
bring
want to bring,
Carrie.
huh?
Bring Carrie over here.
She should come on. She's maybe in the group watching. That homecoming queen kicker, I brought her to the attention of Langston, and there's a young lady, Chelsea Sipple, who interviews a player each week, and usually she's interviewing. She's a high school student, and she usually interviews college recruit football players. Not always the top of the state, but they all are probably playing at the next level. And she interviewed her this for this past week. That was pretty cool. So uh,
Good.
I'm glad that us bringing her attention maybe helped get her a little more exposure. Um, I would love to have her on. I see Carrie just posted says she saw it. That it was a great interview. If you haven't seen it, Jim, you should. Carrie Chelsea does a great job of interviewing. It's her second year doing it. She's a senior. It's what she wants to do in life, and she's become a very confident young lady at doing this stuff, and she handled that interview wonderfully, I thought. So getting to give those other, she said she's been watching on Tuesday too. Good. Something we talked about last night, Tuesday, Jim, I wanted to talk to you about. The school that I'm or had been for the longest time tied to Olympic, and a situation occurred Friday night. Did you hear about it?
I didn't hear anything about Olympic. What's going on?
Okay. So Friday night, late in the game, a fight broke out in the stands, and it was down in the lower part of the stands. And I'm sorry I don't have the video here. Um, I should have brought up the video. You can find the video, but about 15 students, who they were all young people, were involved in the fight. And the fight spilled out onto the track, and they had to obviously evacuate the stadium. And this is a situation that is occurring across the nation. These fights at games, they seem to have taken an uptick in the last couple of years. And maybe this year seems to even be a higher uptick. And my question first to you is, how do you think we address this?
Well, first thing is, do not look at what we've done in the history, in the past history. Or you can if you want to, but we haven't always addressed it very well. You go back into the late 60s, early 70s, during the very beginnings of where all these schools are being integrated and consolidated also. You go over to Richmond County, the Hamlet guys didn't really care for the Rockingham guys. Don't even, I mean, before you even think about the segregation of schools, but we had a lot of chances to do things right, and what we ended up doing, uh, we delay games like you wouldn't believe. We had situations like over in Albemarle, West Montgomery, they couldn't play games unless it was like the game ended before it got dark. I think they started the game like at 3:30 that afternoon.
Mhm.
They did the same thing over Pinecrest back in 1971. After about the second week of October, they played every game on Saturday, and every game started at 1 o'clock. At least when it was a home game. And that year they had like 3 or 4 home games there. I don't think that's necessarily the right way to do it. What you do have to have is a strong relationship with law enforcement. I'm not going to say that I want these kids to be arrested or anything like that. I do believe you have to discipline kids, and it's not about throwing them in prison and jail. I mean, truly discipline these kids, let them know their action is not tolerated. If you do this on our school grounds and you're a student here, you will be suspended. I'm not talking about out of school suspension whatsoever. We're not here to cater you, and you got to have a zero tolerance. If you need to, this is not the first time this happened. Expel them. I mean, I have no mercy about it. If you don't learn your lesson the first time, you're kind of on probation if you get suspended anyway. Do it a second time, let them move somewhere else. Make them go to private school or somewhere else that will have to deal with that matter. Uh, but we got to bring back our we got to support our teachers. We got to support our coaches. I know there's some coaches that can't yell at their kids when they want to. I mean, I don't really think you have to yell at kids, but sometimes you do it to make an emphasis, not to be mean or anything like that. But next thing you know, Johnny's mother's like, "Well, you made him cry when they came back because he said he missed a tackle," and the coach is like, "Really, I did that." You got to toughen these kids up. I mean, there's consequences to actions, but I mean that's my take on it.
So sometimes in these situations, and I've seen them occur over the years, and I'll not so much play back on. I grew up in desegregation. and I'll not play back on that era, but I'm going to move to our modern era.
Right.
And in some of the situations I've encountered, so as an example, there have been 3 shootings at Garinger High School. Now they were not in the stadium; they were outside of the stadium. But situations like that typically involve non-enrolled
Students.
students. Now, I don't know the status of all of the 15 involved in the situation Friday night. There was no gun or anything. But we do have an element that is not a part of the school that attends games, that attends high school games. And I'm confident this is true everywhere. And some of that element is there to be not to be there for the game or not to socialize with, many students go to games just to socialize. They're not there to watch the game, they're socializing, but they're not there to cause trouble. We have another element that comes to games that doesn't fit into either one of those categories, and they could be a cause of the issue.
Right.
Now, when I played, we had lots of teachers, that attended games. So there were more adults around in the stands.
Right.
Now, when you go to games, you don't see too many adults. The number of adults you see are fewer. At least that's the situation in the larger school systems. So, like Charlotte Mecklenburg, up in Wake, up in Guilford County, you're going to see a much larger disparity of adult to younger student. One of the things
I
that's being
agree with you.
floated. So one of the things that's being floated is using chaperones, requiring chaperones. Now, so I see a comment here. They made a rule at one point at my high school there was no loitering. Yeah, that's been true everywhere, but that's if you're not in the stands, so out and about and around. But if you're up in the stands, then that wouldn't apply. And this fight started in the stands, down in the lower section of the stands, down near the fence. So even that would not have applied here. And one of my thoughts, Jim, was getting more law enforcement involved as a presence.
Right.
Not and our law enforcement is to protect and serve, and we should not have to pay to have off-duty police officers be at games. We should have police officers at games. If we want to pay some off-duty police officers, that's fine. But with the situation that's getting worse and worse, law enforcement needs to be less concerned about always going after the speeder, after the whatever. I don't want to get into some of my other views on things, but let's not infringe on people's liberties so much as protect people's rights and liberties and safety. And that would be a safety situation, especially with our kids.
Well, Dale, let me ask you a quick question. You think when kids are smoking outside, you think they make them more calm and they'll be less likely to fight? I mean, we are a tobacco state. So should we be promoting smoking at high school games?
No.
Oh, come on,
Absolutely.
Dale. You know, when I was in
Absolutely.
high school, you used to be able to, I mean, you used to be able to smoke my freshman year, then they took that away.
Yeah,
I'm being facetious when I say that.
I know you are. I know you are.
I,
I don't know. I don't know what we can do to address it, but I think we need more adults in the stands to watch and help mitigate. But quite honestly, the presence of someone in uniform, and I use the analogy of what happened after 9/11. I flew a lot. I used to fly, all the time. I had over 500 flights in about a 15-year period. I was on 500 different planes. So in and out of airports a lot. And I know my way around airports. I'm very comfortable. I'm the guy that can get through a security checkout like that because I know how to get my stuff and what to do, and I'm very efficient with it. But after 9/11, and I went into the airport, and there was hardly anybody there. I was in the airport the first day that Charlotte Douglas opened up. I think my flight was the second or third flight to take off out of Charlotte. We had very, very few people, but there were National Guards everywhere. And as soon as I saw a National Guardsman standing there, a kid that's 18 to 20 years old, I don't know how old those kids were, but just about every one of them were young kids. Immediately, my whole feeling changed. And I'm a confident individual, but I felt like for some reason I had to be more careful. And there's nothing I'm not ever gonna be come close to being on a no-fly list or anything like that. Um,
Right.
the presence of authority will dampen. So, what's the problem with putting some uniformed officers in the stands or around the stands, a few more to help kind of quell that? I don't know. I just think it's going to get worse, Jim, because I read. I, I, it seems like I can't open up. I can't do a search on high school football to want to look at some things that's happening around the country without something popping up about a fight or an altercation at a game somewhere in the country.
Well, another thing I think we have to do is we do have a mental health epidemic on our hands. I mean, I think there's a lot of people. I think we're all to a certain degree mentally ill anyway. Some of us are not as extreme as others. Like I might have a slight cold, and somebody else might have just a 105-degree flu when it comes to um,
Right.
being mentally ill. But we have to do better. We got to take away that stigma. I think we need to have mental health advisors in our schools. If somebody's not feeling well, can't handle stress. I mean, right
Hmm.
now, a lot of times it's maybe one or two guidance counselors if you're lucky. They might have 250 kids. Uh, we just don't do enough about mental health. There's
No, you don't.
so many things that we have uh, if you want everything in the school to get better when it comes to academics, discipline, athletics, everything, you got to have that ability to reach out. And I just don't know if we have it at this point. Actually, I know we don't, and we need to do a better job. So instead of putting all that money into instant replay on your football field, hire somebody to handle that.
Yeah, there's so many things we can do better. And that's certainly, at the end of the day, we have um, education based athletics for one reason. And we have to remember that the primary reason that we have it is education. The athletics part of it does or should help bring some unity and some commonness that makes kids hopefully have incentive, not just players, but those that attend games to have some incentive to want to go to school, to have some pride. But at the end of the day, they're there to be educated first, not to be an athlete first. And thus, things that we put into the school and things that we do should address those issues before we worry about athletic issues.
Right.
Have have a adult in groups of two kids. Now, I thought about this, but maybe not two. Maybe with a small group, I think it needs to be more than two, but
Four,
less than
4 or 6
10.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 to 6 needs to have an adult. Adult will
Oh.
take responsibility for a group of kids.
We know the big thing right now also that hurts is all the used to have it like if a dad went to Albemarle or the grandfather went to Albemarle, the son went to Albemarle, and the grandson went to Albemarle,
Yep.
and now a lot of the places like in Concord, for example, it used to be Concord High, and then Central Cabarrus came in the '60s, and then you had got J.M. Robinson, you got Hickory Ridge, Cox Mill, West Cabarrus, Northwest Cabarrus, all these schools that were there. There's not a lot of loyalties to those programs, and as such, you don't have as many adults going there because they didn't graduate from those places. And
Exactly.
if like right now, if I had a son that went to play at Cedar Ridge, thank God he didn't play at Cedar Ridge. I'd be like just probably chew off my tongue. But I wouldn't have that much of a emotional attachment to Cedar Ridge because I didn't go there. I mean, I grew up 100
Right.
miles southwest of here. I think that has a lot to do with it. To be honest with you, there's not a lot of loyalty to these two programs unless you have generation after generation of family being there.
Well, when you get into systems, school systems that are large, like CMS, Charlotte, perfect example. I'll use it. This is going to apply at Wake. It's going to apply in Guilford County. It's going to apply to those systems probably nearly as much as it does in Mecklenburg County. Uh, One, you have the creation of new high schools, which splits and takes groups of people from one school to another. And that divvies up what you just talked about having. I call it, tradition, part of the
Right.
tradition, the heritage of a school and a program, parents and grandparents, uncles and aunts, and all having taken part in the school. But the other thing is that we see here in Charlotte is that people move in. It's a very transient situation. You don't have families that were here. Um, it's hard to find people who were born in Charlotte. Um,
Right.
I can find them, yes, but the percentage of people born in Charlotte of the population today is probably under 50%. Whereas
Oh,
when I was in high school, it was probably upwards of 80%, somewhere in that range.
how close are you from Still Creek, by the way?
Well, I live in the middle of Still Creek.
Okay. I just talked to a lady today at work, and she came from West Virginia, and she lives in Still Creek, which kind of proves your point. You have so many people that have migrated from different places of the United States to your area, and same
Yep.
thing with mine.
You know, there's some benefit to Charlotte being like your number two business center in the U.S. and having all these corporate headquarters here, and you know, from a business standpoint, yeah, great. It's a shining beacon. But that means, when you get into those types of businesses, people move from locations to locations for one. So they may
Right,
come in for a 4-year stint and get a promotion and move.
right.
Um, or they're going to open up more, they're going to expand their corporate offices here, need more people, so more people come in. And it just creates a population of people who didn't even have parents that played at any high school in Charlotte, let alone the high school that they are attending, that the kids are attending. So is a parent going to go to a game after their kids have left? No. Are aunts and uncles going to go to games? Yeah, it's even hard to get aunts and uncles to appear at games now.
I
There's
never
so
had
much.
an aunt or uncle ever live near me because a lot of people
Right.
like me. I mean, my parents were from Aberdeen and Southern Pines, and
Hmm.
we didn't have any family who lived in Albemarle. My parents were transplant. I was considered a transplant. I was born there.
So we got a big situation that's I agree to a degree what Bob has said, failure of the family culture, but it's also, I think, a to what you pointed to, Jim. It's a failure of us recognizing mental health issues. Do you remember when ADD, and now it's ADHD, when it was
Right.
first starting to be recognized? How many people said it was baloney? You know, uh, just
And then
just
they met Terry Bradshaw, and they realized, well, maybe there's something to it, you know.
um, it's something I had some discussion with my very bright son. Um, it's something that I've never been diagnosed with, but I probably have, because I a lot of the markers for ADHD fit me, and our lack of recognition and ADHD may or may not lead to these kind of issues that we mentioned here, but there are many other mental health issues that go undiagnosed or unrecognized because a lot of people want to believe they don't exist, where you can just will yourself out of these issues. Um, with ADHD, um, you can concentrate on you can do well in some things, but in some things you can't stay focused, and it has everything to do with interest that can keep you guided in. Well, why can't you be focused on this? If you can focus on this, why can't you focus on this? So this lack of people recognizing that those kinds of issues exist, not just with that illness, we'll call it, but with all mental health illnesses.
Right.
Uh, I don't know how much we correct with that. We do need to correct family culture, but more than family culture, we need to impact community culture.
Well, we need to
That's
learn how to communicate, for one thing. Uh,
right.
these things right here, these iPhones, I've seen too many parents that give their kids an iPhone and they think, well, I gave them an iPhone, now I can monitor where they are, and they don't need nearly as much supervision as they did in the past. And to me, that's baloney. This thing right here is not going to protect your kid from getting into a fight, or uh, it's not a is not as nearly as effective as having mom and dad right there physically there.
Right.
Also, I think our kids right now, if you go to a lot of the games, you're going to see 25% of the kids, they're not doing anything except for playing on their phones, and they're messaging somebody that's two seats down from them.
But you know
And
what? That's the same. In all honesty, when I was in high school, it was the exact same way. They just didn't have phones, so they would
Point
congregate and
notes.
talk, right?
Yeah.
So they congregate and talk, and they weren't paying
Communicate.
attention to the game.
Yeah.
Many times they weren't even in the stands. They were out and about at the concession stand, or it's where that loitering rules started coming in. They were standing under the bleachers, or they. So I'm just looking here what Carrie. Many children are treated for mental health, but age out of medic. Yeah, we have a whole healthcare problem. There's no
Oh yeah.
doubt that I think people have lost sight. We won't get political, but people have lost sight of really why we have governments, and governments are supposed to protect us. We're supposed to put governments in place to provide for us. That's why we have that structure. We replaced it. We had the fiefdoms, you had a king or whatever situation you had, and he was supposed to supply for the people, but he didn't. Uh, he did a little bit, right? Provided a little bit of protection military wise, but from a food and job and all other resource wasn't quite so much. And uh, when we created our government here, we wanted to get away from the rule of one person setting all that, but we still wanted to be able to have a an ability to support ourselves first, and that's why we
Right.
put that structure in place. It's not to support those that are in government, which means that yes, we should be providing better health care, um, without question. I don't think that's a debatable issue. We should be,
Yeah.
and so she mentions that's one of the problems is people age out of it, and again, I think that's because a lot of the people who make decisions fail to recognize that these are real issues.
Right.
Um, so I'm gonna make a plug on something. There's a thing, Jim. I want you to write this down. All you got to do is go on YouTube and search for SBSK, and SBSK stands for Special Books for Special Kids. Um, for the last 2 weeks, I watch at least 2 videos of his a day. And I don't remember how I came across it. I partly I came across it because I'm trying to understand some issues my oldest granddaughter has. I want to have more empathy. And as I started watching some of these videos, Jim, and it's not just mental. Some of the people have mental, but they also have physical issues. Like the last one that I just watched was a girl with cerebral palsy, and she's learning to walk. That's a great video. Learning to walk at 18, and it's awesome to listen to that girl talk about her life and her outlook on life. But watch this: if you want to feel good, you wouldn't think that you would feel good, but if you want to feel good, you watch these videos and listen to what these kids, most of them are kids, um, have to say. It's now I watch it to gain more empathy.
Right.
I don't want to feel sorry for anybody. I want to understand. Anyway, SBSK for anybody watching. Um, uh, yes, Carrie, you should. It's they cover, you name the disease or the mental health condition. He used to be a teacher. He was a teacher for 4 years of special needs children. And then after his fourth year, his first group of kids graduated, and he was thinking about what do I do, and he decided to go out and start interviewing kids. Now he's a very popular YouTuber. Um, he is just one of the most. You can tell he's genuine, and his excitement with these kids. If we could all have that kind of empathy toward each other, we wouldn't have these fights in the stands.
I agree.
We need more empathy now.
I do think we need to set our standards higher too, because I think if you give kids, you give any of us parameters and tell us these are your parameters, you need to stay within your parameters. You do have a certain level of freedoms within those parameters, but you need to know where your boundaries are.
Uh-huh.
We expect you to be up here. Kids are going to do their best. They will try to achieve. Don't get me wrong. You're going to have some that are going to try to push their, push the envelope, but you got to call them out sometimes. And I think that's where we've kind of failed in society. We've forgotten to call these kids out sometimes and tell them we expect better.
That we expect better, exactly. Okay, Jim, what I'm doing here is I figure we could just go ahead and let's take a look at some of these projections. And I want to say first of all, you and I talked about doing these projections last week, and
Right.
of course, I didn't do anything on it really until I couldn't get focused in on wanting to do anything on it till this morning.
Yeah,
But then I started, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just
it's tough.
there's so much to have to do here.
Right.
Maybe I can do something between now and next week and do better. but it requires too much work. So all I did, first of all, was what I think are the projections for 4A East and West and 3A West. And then from that point forward, it's just a look at who's going to make the playoffs and who's going to be bubble teams. So
Okay.
what I wanted to do here then is go ahead and start. Let me start at the back end of it, not the front end. Let me turn off that caption. Let me get back to it. So I'm going to go all the way down to 1A.
Yeah, 1A is so easy.
1A is very, very, very easy, at least to project who's going to be in the playoffs. The seedings, maybe not quite so much, but I just figured I wouldn't bracket them. So what I did here is I downloaded the RPI, because RPI is going to be how you're going to be put into the playoffs first based on your conference finish. Let me make sure our view is us to the side, and is the window full screen?
I can see it.
Okay, it's not hit off on the side, right?
Now, what I've done is I expanded my view so I can see the whole screen. I'm so farsighted.
But is it in the center of the screen and us are on the left? Let me see here.
Yeah, you had it fine just beforehand. That was fine.
Is that better there?
Actually, once you take us off of there, just put your document on there. There you go. That's even better.
Okay, good. All right. So I went to the NCHSAA, got the RPI rankings. This is for the West. The RPI is going to be how you are seeded after your conference win. The conference winners are seeded first, so they go in as automatics, and then after that, we go based on RPI. I do, after we go through this, especially when we get up to the 4A, and I can point some things out. We want to talk about RPI versus power rankings, but this is based on RPI. Who is in the playoffs? Now, this doesn't mean who's going to be the number one seed necessarily, because number one seeds will first be based on conference winners. But most of your top teams are going to end up being conference.
Look at number 2, 3, number 6, and number 8. They're all in the same conference. That's the Smoky Mountain Conference. That is a tough conference. And somewhere probably around 15 or 16, you're going to find Swain County in there, I bet you. Swain 15. Look at that.
Yep.
The only other team in that conference is Cherokee, and they're probably about middle way down. Oh, number 27. Here. Look at that. How would you like that to be in the
be in that conference?
Be in the conference still 27th. Of course, that's out of 34 teams now, but
it's out of 34 teams, but and so 32 are going to make it. And then I looked here at, okay, well, what's it going to take for a bubble? So if you look at the RPI, there's 2 more weeks to go. And certainly the RPI will change. But is the RPI going to change from a 0.31 to a 0.32? Maybe not. I don't know. That's a bit of a change, but you might could put Highland Tech. But really, if you look at this,
those 2 teams right there.
Is which one of those 2 teams is going to be in? I think Highland Tech's in for sure. So which one of those 2 teams is going to be in? That's real close. So
yeah,
and South Stanley with no wins at all is more likely to get in than Elkin with 1 win right now.
Right.
And that's because of the who you play. And as you can see, the big difference between South Stanley and Elkin, opponents win percentage of 0.459 versus a 0.337.
It helps
That,
the South Stanley plays in that 1A, 2A conference. Got
yes,
J.M. Robinson, North Stanley, Mount Pleasant. All those are good, pretty good 2A schools.
that helps to a degree. Now, I'm going to talk about um, a way to cheat the system for the future later. And let's go over here to the East. So, like you said, this is real easy to pick. It's like, Rosman, you're not getting in. You're
Yeah.
too far away. And Elkin, you really need to get a win. And then if we jump down here to the East, the
Yeah,
number one suspect is the number one
and get this,
RPI.
Tarboro and Riverside Martin are in the same conference.
Yeah.
That's the wild side there. Yeah, all those teams. I mean, it's kind of cool seeing Wilson Prep. I think this might be their first year in the association or their second year. They're they're
Second
going to be
year, I think. I thought I remembered seeing them pop up last year.
they did. I know maybe 3 or 4 years ago. A lot of teams schedule them for non-conference,
Uh-huh.
and but they've been around for a few years. I don't know if this is their first or second or third year in the association, but
Right.
they're
I
a
was
welcome
thinking they were
addition.
in last year, but I don't know.
They
I don't
probably were.
know.
So you got Gates, Warren, and the bubble down
Well,
there. I think
yeah,
is
one
probably
one
going to be like Lejeune and
I'm
Chatham.
sorry. Say again now.
Probably Lejeune and Chatham. Probably believe your bottom two.
Yeah, so if we go all the way
Yeah.
down, you got Lejeune and Chatham, and you can see they're right on top of each. They're very close, although.
Oh, that Columbia. I think Columbia is not eligible for the playoffs.
Oh, are they not? Oh, look at there. They're 0-2.
Yeah, I think they have. I think they're pretty much playing. What they're doing might be 8 man, but I think I read they're not going to be in the playoffs.
Okay.
So
Okay.
not
So
really a bubble on that side.
yeah, there's no bubble on that side. You're right. No bubble at all. So can't really project who's going to play who here. I didn't go that deep. Um,
Right.
Too difficult. So let's go look at 2A.
You got more teams in 2A.
A lot more teams in 2A. Whoops. Let's zoom this in. Let's get over here on the West. So one of the things to note is if people start to wonder and complain about what they see, it's very important who you play, how
Right.
good the teams are you play. If they don't win so much, you can be 8-0 like Chase, but your RPI is down here
Right.
because it's a 0.39 opponent's winning percentage. So these two teams at 8-0, East Surrey versus, now of course they're not. Um,
Well, let me ask you this: where's Shelby? I don't see them in the top 12. They got to be what 15 or 16.
so Shelby's down here at
21st. Look at
21.
that.
Yep.
And you know what? I had somebody tell me that Chase didn't play anybody, and therefore they're not as good as Shelby. It doesn't matter. You look at Wake Forest back in 2016. They didn't play anybody that was over like the state RPI over like 106 or something like that. They won the
Right.
4A state championship. You
Yep.
can be a very good team and play a very, very weak schedule.
This is so true. You don't know. The thing is we don't know, and I reserve judgment until you have some kind of metric that can tell you, which means they play a good team. And how do they play against that good team? Until then, you can say, oh, they play a weak schedule, they this, they that, but you really don't know because you don't know.
Look at 21, 22, and 23. Shelby, West Lincoln, and North Stanley.
Yep.
Who would have thought North Stanley and Shelby be said, even close to each other? Historically, it's been crazy. And you know what else? North Stanley beat Randleman. Randleman's above. But look at Randleman's record: 6-2. North Stanley's 5-3. So there's a
Right.
lot of. It's not a linear thing. This is not a perfect system, but it's pretty darn good. Now, if you
Well,
scroll
look.
down a little bit, you're going to probably see a couple teams, Madison and Owen. They're going to be below. Neither one of them are going to be in the top 32. They're going to be around 40 something, 45, 46, 47. There's
Yep.
Madison and Owen. One of those two teams right there will make the playoffs. They're in a 1A, 2A conference, and those are the
Yep.
only 2A teams.
Exactly. So
So the bubble
that's
actually
the
moves up a little bit because of that.
that I wish I had just had the focus to at least like I did with the 4A and the 3A West. Um,
Right,
you're going to find that, like you'll see with 3A, there will be a seeded West Charlotte team because they will be the 3A winner out of their conference, out of a 3A, 4A conference. So we have to remember that a team can go 1-10 and still be a quote unquote number one seed because they won their classification because the other team lost every game, and thus the other team in that classification lost every game. Thus, they finished second in the classification.
right.
Um, so one is your classification conference finish, and I say it like that because most conferences are all the same classification, but we have these mixed 4A, 3As, 3A, 2As, 1A, 2As. We have these mixed conferences.
Right.
So that's exactly
That's
right, Jim.
I
Good
think that's the
point
only
there.
one that's going to be like that. The other split conferences winners in 2A are going to be above the bubble. So
So it's going to
really,
put exactly. So it's going to put some strain on the bubble and maybe even not be a bubble.
yeah,
Um,
that's the thing. Is that any of those guys can they catch up with West Stanley or Moorhead or
they're going to
uh,
have to
possibly
exactly.
Brevard? I mean, right now those three teams are kind of on the outside looking in.
If we went to the playoffs today, those teams are out. Exactly.
Yep, exactly right.
Those teams are out, even though they all have better records and much better RPIs. They're out.
Right.
So, which is, I know that seems harsh, but if you remember, it used to be that two teams from each classification. So that 0-11 team would have made it too if they finished
Right.
second in the classification. So this is a little better than that. This isn't perfect, but we've had worse situations in the past.
I
Even
think
in
it'd be
our
fun to have
modern,
I think we
say
should have a
again,
selections committee just like they do the NCAA. Really make people mad that way.
oh, it would. Oh gosh, I'm it would make a lot of people mad. Exactly. All right, so we
And
see
by
the
the way, I'm
bubble.
against that.
Yeah, I am too. I know you are, Jim. That's too subjective. So here, we could almost say because of an RPI of 0.47 versus a 0.49, that these three teams are probably not going to make the playoffs because of that move up by who will it be? Madison?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. They got 2 weeks to make up that difference, and it's possible, but they better start winning. I mean, the best way to move up your RPI is to win.
Is to win. Exactly. You can't control now what your opponents are going to do and what your opponents are going to do. You can only control what you can do. So let's look at the East of 2A. And again, this is sorted on RPI. No
I think
number
Wallace Rose
one.
Hill, they're 5.
Yeah, Wallace
There's
Rose.
some good. There's some really good teams out there in the East. They're just not. I don't think there's as many in the East as there are in the West. But I mean, Clinton there's a
Exactly.
good team. West Craven beat Green Central this past week. Cummings they lost to North Moore. Cummings is a good two-way school. South Granville, that's Southwest Edgecombe because I can tell that's the only school that I know that spells Southwest and capitalized the W. Roanoke Rapids, Midway, Bunn, all good teams.
Mhm.
And look at that right there. That's your bubble. You
That's
got it
your
right.
bubble.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you right now, though, the teams like North Pitt, East Blade, and North Johnston, they don't need to be sweating too much, but they still need to still continue to win,
They
or
do. Exactly.
at least
I,
win
I,
one game out of the next two.
I didn't stretch the bubble up because I think it might be hard to make up zero point zero 0.02
Right.
difference, but I don't know because again, I didn't run numbers to see who everyone's playing.
Look
But
where
I
South
thought that would,
Columbus is. They're number 34.
yeah.
South Columbus historically has been a very strong two-way program, and the wheels have fallen off.
And there aren't any teams down here that are part of a split that would.
I don't see any. I think they're
No.
all. I think you're all good on that.
So I think that's what the bubble looks like here. Um,
Right.
Manio. Okay. Let's look at 3A. 3A, I did one side and I didn't do the other. So let's do the side that I didn't do first, which is the East. Bring it over so you can see the RPI.
Very good. Look at Smithfield Selma at the very top.
Yeah, so they'll
That's
be the number one seed as it looks like right now. If they win out, their RPI is going to be the highest, and they'll be a number one conference winner with the highest RPI. But now that RPI is real close,
right.
so that could sorry, don't have all the RPI in there, do I?
Look at CBA Cock. They're still undefeated. They're 8-0.
Yeah.
You don't find many undefeated teams in Pikeville after about week 3. Going there. I mean, see, I mean, the 3A East is loaded. I want to say you get to about, I want to say it's about Southern Nash and it starts dropping off, though.
So you look at some things like this right here with Jacksonville.
They're
So you
having
got
a
a
down
three and four
season.
you got a 3-4 team against or over 6-2, 5-3s. And again, that's because if you step over and you look at
Who they play?
the winning percentages, the teams that they played had a greater than 50% win percentage, and the teams that those teams played had a greater than 50% winning percentage. So
Right.
that has a lot of power. Your win percentage may not be good, but you play
Some other
you know
factors involved.
yeah, 0.70, man. That means you played. That might be the highest. That might be the highest in the East. It is.
Yeah.
So from an RPI point or from a win percentage point, maybe not from a power point, but from a win percentage, Jacksonville played the toughest
I played.
schedule.
I played a. I mean, you have to play Havelock. You have to play Newbern. You have to play Rose and Conley. That's a tough schedule. And they also had a brutal out of conference schedule too. So
It does matter who you play and how you schedule.
right.
Um, As we get down here to the bubble,
Wow, look at Scotland in there.
yeah, with a 1-6 north side, like right on their heels too. Um, I thought that's a real close bubble with those final three, with the 32nd, 33, and 34th spot. Those look to be pretty. Looks tough for anyone else to be able to um, step up unless they happen to be in a split conference and they
No,
win the conference.
Scotland's in a split conference. They're in a 3A, 4A, and the other team in that conference is Lee County. That can't remember if they play Lee County this week or not, but I think whoever wins that game would take over would win the 3A in that 3A, 4A split.
If they're
That's going to be a pretty close one.
if they are if they finish with the same record in
Yeah,
conference.
exactly. The finish the same. Now Scotland could beat Lee County, but if Lee County has a higher record within the conference, Lee County is going to get the bid, obviously. But
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just so
Scotland,
just so people understand that as well. And I mentioned that because my buddy Sam Griner was saying when they beat the week that they beat West Mecklenburg a couple of weeks ago, that put them in the playoffs. That gave them the 3A spot. No, it didn't. They have it now, but
yeah,
that didn't give them the spot because West Mecklenburg could have still finished with more conference wins. They
right.
would have finished ahead. It would only have applied if they had the same amount of conference wins, then they would have gotten the head-to-head win. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's some.
split conferences. This was my negative about split conferences. I'm less negative about them than I was, say, 10 years ago when you had two teams from each side of the split make it.
Right.
Then you could have two sorry teams make it.
Oh, we'd have 1 and 10 teams in the 3As or 4As make the
Yep.
playoffs. And
I remember
just
that
awful.
time when Rose and was it Newbern had a down year.
Yeah, I know Newbern had missed the playoffs a couple of years.
Yeah, so Newbern and Rose they were in the same conference. They were in a split conference. They were the only two teams in the split,
Right.
if I remember correctly.
And you'd
So,
have a South Codwell make the playoffs. Uh, and they're like a 1 and 9 team because they beat McDowell.
uh-huh,
So
exactly. All right, so let's take a look now at 3A West, and I did a little more work on 3A West. 3A West, I did project conference winners, and that's this column that you see here, the one that you see.
gotcha.
Um, I don't know if my projections are accurate, but those were my projections. I didn't spend a lot of time analyzing the games they had to finish with, but let me get this at 250 so I can see it better. Oopsie. 250.
You know, the one thing I wish they'd do with RPIs, I wish if you played a two, like if you're a 2A school and you play a 3A school, I think you should get a little bit more of a bump for whatever reason.
So I don't
Like
want what I want them to do is to not use RPI and instead use power.
Yeah,
I think power would be a better way to address it because the power rankings do apply to every school across in every school that you play. Their power ranking is applied, and every school that they play, their power ranking. I mean, it just kind of goes all the way across so that every school gets factored in. It's a very deep algorithm, but it does provide a little bit more. And you're going to see here in a moment why that's going to be an issue where RPI may not be the best way to do this. But Kings
Right.
Mountain projected to win number one, and you see that their RPIs is the highest
Right.
as well, and Oak Grove and West Henderson, and a bunch of 8-0 teams here.
Right.
A bunch of undefeated teams. East Lincoln there, Dudley looking good. West Charlotte sneaks in at 4-4 because they're in they're in a split conference. They're in the 3A side of what might be the most brutal conference in the state. You have to play Chambers and Mallard Creek and Huff, and
Right.
you have no easy pushovers of North Mecklenburg, and you got West Mecklenburg. You got some other decent teams, but that's how West Charlotte gets in there, and High Brighton as well.
Irwin's also I think a split conference.
That's right. You're right. That's right. They are.
Can you scroll up to the top? Is West Henderson up there, the 1, 2, or 3? Yeah,
Yep.
number 3. Great, gotcha.
The third best RPI. You see, Crest is in there at 14.
Right.
Tuscola. Teams that are not in that first group that you need to watch out for. Boy, look at there. South Point, Ledford, Tuscola. I think those are all teams that can make some noise in the playoffs.
And I think Tuscola is in this. Are they in the same conference with West Henderson? I guess that's
Yes,
the
they
reason
are.
why you had West. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, one of those two teams. If Tuscola beats West Henderson will probably fall down considerably, and then Tuscola will be of the top. So.
Right. Yeah, I made a little projection that I don't know. I went with West.
I agree with that. I think West Henderson will beat Tuscola though.
But I could be wrong.
I'm with you though. I think it's a good pick.
We get
now
down
look at
here.
This. Yeah.
Now we look at our bubble, and I'm going to skinny this down just a little bit so we can see it. So here's our bubble. And the bubble I thought it looks to be bigger here, especially to get up to 32. I tried to do is say about 1 percentage of point. I don't know why I went up to 48.
It's all pretty close to each other though. They're pretty tightly. There's a significant drop between North Lincoln and Huss. And same thing with North Henderson, North Davis. Those 8 teams are pretty tight with each other, to be honest with you.
They are. So that's, I figured 1 point around the bubble, 0.01 points around the bubble was enough to call a bubble. So this one here is 0.02. So North Davidson didn't get thrown in. North Henderson did because they were 0.1 off of Parkwood. And then, of course, all of these teams are so close here that they could fall down.
Look at number 36, Pisgah. They almost beat Tuscola last week. They lost 35-34, and Tuscola's undefeated.
Of course, that's a point where
got to win.
Well, that's true. I was going to say that's a point where you can see rivalries can really amp up a player or a team to play, because that's a huge rival game right there. But yeah, they're close to the bubble, but I don't know if enough can happen to move them up.
They got some. They need to really make some noise the next couple of games and hope some teams up in the bubble.
Yep.
Fall
hope
down.
All their opponents lose. I mean, hope all their opponents win, and their opponents' win, all of them, and then hope that they win, and that'll push their RPI up some. But is it enough to get up here into 32nd? That Parkwood team's not a horrible team. I'm not saying they're a great team. Not a good, maybe somewhere in that good area.
Yeah, average to good. I got you.
Yeah, average to good, somewhere in that range. So
fair to middling.
I think there are some teams above Parkwood that might be not be as good, but I don't know. RPI, who you play says
Look
a
at
lot.
Ashboro. Look at Ashboro Concord. Those are some of those old Western
Yep.
North Carolina High School Athletic Association teams that were so good. Central Cabarrus, I mean, they had a great run under Donnie Kiefer and also with
Uh-huh.
Kenneth McGlamrick. And uh, I just don't know what's going on in Central. I remember one time they had a chance to go to, there was, they had a game that was canceled and they had a chance to play somebody else on a certain Friday, but the coach didn't want to because of Carolina UNC was playing that night in football. And you hear stuff like that, and you're like, it can't be true. Then you find out it is true.
Right.
I don't know. It's not throwing stones or anything like that. So
So
it
I
is what it
pointed
is.
exactly. I pointed this out because Montgomery Central is at 43 out of 54, and they're 0-8. So there's some two-win teams below
They
them.
they play in a brutal schedule though.
They
Look at
play a
that.
brutal, yeah, 0.69 is what their opponent's winning percentage is. Um, this just goes to show a little bit. It's a little inkling of records don't always indicate the quality of the team. You got to look at who they lost,
Right.
how they lost, and all those other things. If you really want to, 0-8's bad. I'm not trying to justify an 0-8 record and thinking one needs to be highly satisfied with it. But look at that. That's one of, if not, at 0.69 is going to be the toughest. Yep, that's the toughest by win percentage. It's the toughest schedule.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go back to the East, and I want you to look at Havelock and CBA Cock.
Okay, so CBA
And
Cock was.
you keep on going up. It's
I scrolled the wrong way here. So CBA Cock here. Are you
look at
wanting their?
their 0.4643. Look at Havelock 0.562. I mean, it's kind of goes back to what Havelock might be 6-2, and CBA Cock may be 8-0. I would rather play CBA Cock than have to try to win against
Well,
Havelock.
picking between those two teams, I would lean to Havelock. But again, a lot of that might have to do with tradition, history.
Oh, I mean, I think Havelock's better even this year, but
So check
I'd
this
rather
out.
play CBA Cock. Yeah,
So I did go ahead and throw them in brackets just so we could look at some potential. This is not going to be the way it is. There's two
great.
problems with what I did. Now my projections for one are subjective. This team will beat this team, but that's not the biggest problem with what I've done here. The biggest problem is I'm not able to forecast every game, and thus I don't know what the actual RPIs are going to end up being.
Right.
So I don't because so I couldn't factor those in. I had to use the present RPIs. But if they stuck in a similar fashion, Kings Mountain to get Parkwood, Central Davidson, Franklin, High Brighton, Freedom. There's a conference matchup there.
Yeah, and you look at that. If that holds, West Charlotte looks like they're going to be in pretty good position. To be honest with you, I think
West
they'll take
Charlotte,
place.
West Charlotte could honestly make it to Kings Mountain.
Yeah, I could see them making about the third round. Then that's
Yeah, uh, they could potentially make it to this game right here.
right.
Um, I could see them making it there.
Yeah,
Um,
if they get past Kings Mountain, I'll send Griner some type of present.
I like Griner, but it's going to be hard for them to get past Kings Mountain. It's
Yeah.
going to be hard for any team on this side to get past Kings Mountain.
Look at East Lincoln. They to me they have a pretty easy first round opponent. But Hickory, Western Wynn, both of those teams, I wouldn't want to play them in the second round. Either one of
No,
those teams.
that's a tough second round.
Yeah.
And if you really want to think about it, if this were the old playoffs, that would be the first round. So,
Right.
yeah.
Tuscola, Statesville. Statesville's always had a lot of talents,
That could
and
be a
they've had a
shootout.
bad year this year. They could make up a lot of pain during the season by beating Tuscola in that first round. If if these playoffs would actually, or the what you had right here would actually be come to
If
fruition.
Exactly, I'm only showing this to give us a little interesting something to talk about.
Yeah.
Northwest Cabarrus and Lake Norman Charter here. Um, so
Smoky Mountain
South,
Strip. South Point. There you go.
yeah. So South Point's a team to be looking out for. Um,
Would South Point they play Southern Guilford, and what would be their next game after that?
well,
It'd be Irwin, wouldn't it? Or
maybe
Irwin House.
I don't. I don't know. It just sometimes when these mountain teams play these foothill teams,
Crazy things happen.
crazy thing happens because what happens down here with these teams like us is you got some extreme athleticism and speed and
Right.
ability to score.
Right.
Maybe not as disciplined on defense, but with abilities to score. So I don't know. I will have to wait until that matchup actually occurs, but probably Irwin South Point. So South Point gets to here, um, and then South Point gets to here, and then they're going to play somebody down here. West
That South Point
Henderson.
West Henderson matchup, if that ever came to fruition, would be fun to
Yeah,
watch.
I think you've got a Crest and a Ledford here and a Dudley that you're going to have to go through.
Oh, I don't think West Henderson would beat Dudley.
So,
They had to play with each other.
yeah, I would probably say out of this group here, we're going to see Dudley Crest. Maybe. I don't know. Wes Henderson and Crest will be interesting, but I'm going to say Crest right now. And then
Okay.
Dudley. So I think
Gotcha.
it's Dudley and Kings Mountain. No, Dudley and um, South Point here,
Gotcha.
and then it would be South Point. I think South Point's really good. I'm I like what I saw out of South Point. Um, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna flip over and see if anybody made any comments before I go to 4A. Um, got a 6-2 team.
Oh,
Urban.
Bush Todd said, and I think he might be right. Although you might finish the top number one based on split conferences, but you have to have at least a 500 within conference to get that. You'd get an automatic seed, but you wouldn't be ranked with the one seeds at the very
He
top.
might be right.
Yeah,
I got to go back and look at the.
it's it's like
Thank
every
you.
year there's a tweak or something. But I appreciate that. That's a good comment.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. I'll look and I'll apply. I'll apply it next week. Um, thank you. All right. So now 4A. Oh, just last one here because it had my school, West Mecklenburg. Sorry, Wes, you're going to get knocked out if you play Dudley.
That'd be fun though if you were a West Mac guy to go up to Tarpley, eat some good fish, get the snot beaten out of you. But I'll tell you what, that good fish that you would eat and make up for a lot of those breezes. That's for sure.
um, the problem is not a lot of people would go up to the game.
No,
The fan base would be very, very small that went to the game. So very small. I hate to say that, but it would be. Okay, let's look at. I'm gonna start on the east.
all right. Well, Richmond County makes the playoffs.
Yeah, Richmond County looks like they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think there was any doubt about it. But losing 4 games during the season, it
Right.
I know it upset a lot of people in Rockingham. Look at Apex, 8-0.
Yep.
But Apex is 8-0 is a different 8-0 than Cleveland. It's a different 8-0 from Hillside. It's a different 9-0 from Newbern.
Yeah. You look at their opponents' winning percentages. You see a lot of um, difference between them, and especially if you jump up to the top five. All the top fives have a greater than 50%, and actually, you might as well call it 60% win percentage or better. So
Right,
they're all playing good teams, and the teams that those teams play are all good teams. Thus, we
right,
see some very good RPI here. Now, good teams in win percentage, not power rankings. I'm going to
right.
talk about that in a moment. How you can pad your RPI.
So Southern Alamance 6-2, Holly Springs 7-1. I mean, it got some a lot of good
Millbrook,
records there.
yep. I
I've seen
kind of.
Riverside play. They're a solid team.
So as we look at this, Richmond's sitting there at
They're
20th.
comfortably in there. They got to play
Yeah,
Scotland. I think it's their last game of the season. They should win that game. They're in a pretty position. Jordan's in there. So right there, Hope County still has to. I think they need to win that last game just to feel comfortable about it.
uh-huh.
But I forgot it. I think they might have to play Union Pines or somebody like that.
Well, it's
But
close, as you can see here. It's very close. Being, I really maybe even should have put them on the bubble here because it's very
they're right. They're right there, pretty much close to it. I'll say though, Chapel Hill will not. I'm pretty sure Chapel Hill will not make the playoffs.
they're on the
Southview of
bubble.
those teams, I think Southview is better than Knightdale and Chapel Hill. Probably better
Uh-huh.
than Broughton and Sanderson, to be honest with you. Um, Maybe something will come up and Southview will make the playoffs. But there's a big drop between Southview and Apex Friendship.
Yeah, there is big drop. So, and then I had trouble with this, but
Hillside Broughton. Oh, I'd love to go. I could see Broughton that first week.
I didn't mean to do that. Let's scroll back over. So
Hillside
Hillside.
Broughton, Hoggard and Panther Creek. I'd be over Wilmington. Wouldn't go that far. Pine Forest Creek, Pinecrest over Hills, Newbern, Middle Creek. Be fun guys over Raleigh or Apex going down there. Oh, you know what? If that matchup happened, Southern Alamance and Richmond, I
Uh-huh.
had to go over to Graham and watch that game. That would be a slobber knocker. That is a very good matchup. I think Richmond might be just a teeny bit better than Southern Alamance, but you don't go to Southern Alamance over there and push them around. That's a tough team. Leesville Road, Clayton, see Cardinal Gibbons, Laney. Nothing. watched that game. Newbert and Sanderson.
Oh gosh,
Uh,
yeah. Running clock
destruction.
in first quarter.
Millbrook and Riverside Durham. That'd be a fun one to watch.
I
Roseville
think so.
Thompson. That's not bad. Apex Fuquay. I wouldn't go to that one either. That'd be a boring game. Wake Forest. Hood County. Believe it or not, Hood County is kind of a sleeper. They are a good team. They play in a tough conference, but Wake Forest would win that game. Holly Springs, Conley. Conley should win something like that game, but Heritage Jack Brett. That's another. That's going to be a good game right there. Cleveland Jordan. Yeah, Cleveland will beat the heck out of them. So
Okay. So let's
some fun stuff. So let's look at the West here. Look at Mooresville, looking pretty up there.
Mooresville is looking really sharp right now.
Butler's
They've
looking good.
I think they've secured comfortably at number one. I went ahead and projected Mallard Creek. I
That's
think
cool.
we'll see.
I mean, can you imagine having to play Huff or Chambers like in the second
Mallard
round or
Creek.
something like that?
Yeah, exactly. It's just what a tough conference. Mount Tabor. I'm gonna tell you now, I'm gonna keep saying this. I like this squad right here. I like
That's a
Buck.
darn good team right there.
And I'll tell you after the game Friday night, I think I'm going to go to Ardrey Olympic game. But scroll on down here and
So you got Olympic number 20. Look at Olympic 25th, and they're 8-0.
yeah, right here.
Look at their .2634.
Well, that's why. So, is Olympic any good? How do
You
we
don't know.
know?
We just don't know.
We don't know. You can say no because they're only beating weak teams, but you don't know. You know, the schedule is very comparable to last season's schedule. I think it's the same schedule. I think are we in the second year of the alignment?
We are.
Yeah, so it's the same schedule as last year, and they played Ardrey last year to overtime game. Played South of Mecklenburg to the wire. They played Myers Park. It was a good Myers Park team last year. They played them close. But they breezed through a relatively easy non-conference schedule. So you just don't know when teams play such a weak schedule, how good are they? So we're going to find out Friday night if they're better, if they're as good as 8-0 says they are. And they could lose the game and still be considered a good team. They lose by one score. They're still a top 20-ish team, maybe even a top 15 team. They lose by 2 scores. This is probably where they deserve to be. But 4A is you had dropped out, Jim.
Yeah, for some reason, I think I must have lost connection.
And then here's A.O. Brown. I like
Brown. Yeah.
You know, I like to point them out for several reasons. Charlotte Catholic is a really good
17th. They'd be on the roads. They're going to be on the road probably the whole playoffs.
No, they would have a first round home game.
Well, they wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Excuse me. They'll be on the. They most likely. You're right. We'll look at their pairings in just a second. I'm sorry. You're right. This is a bubble.
Oh, there's not much difference between West Forsyth and Southwest either, or South Iredale. That's a that's a pretty neat bubble right there.
Yeah, I need to expand that bubble. Bubble's a little bit bigger, isn't it? That's a real close bubble right there.
That's a tight one there. Heck, North Mecklenburg is not that far from it.
They're
Just a
not that far off. No.
yeah. And look at Myers Park. They're right under there. Be like 36 or so.
Myers Park, 2 seasons ago, they were in the regional finals, lost to Vance.
Now look at
Now
them.
look where they're.
Northern Guilford. You see that? They'd be like 38th team. They're out. So there's some good teams in the 4A West that are you're not going to see them in there. South Meck had a pretty good season. Was it last year?
Yep, they had a pretty good season last year.
Yeah. Well, I gotta see these playoffs here. I'm excited here now. Grimsley, Southwest Guilford. Okay, Hickory Ridge, Charlotte Catholic.
That's a
I'm kind of going to
rematch.
look at this. Yeah, exactly. And look at the second round. Catholic going to Greensboro to play Grimsley. That would be a fun game to watch right there. And Catholic
Yeah,
travels well.
got to go. They got to go on the road here. Then they'd have to go on the road here.
Right.
And then I think if we look down here in this next bracket,
Oh
right
gosh,
below
they
them,
have
they're going to have to face
Butler AC
Butler.
Reynolds.
Um,
Could you imagine
So
that? I mean, that game would be in the mountains. That'd be over in Fairview, over in Buncombe County.
yeah, so
I think
let's see
Butler's
here.
a better team.
So AC Reynolds, I think, would win that game. Butler would win. So Butler and AC Reynolds, I'd still go with Butler. That'd be a good ball
Yeah,
game. I would go with Butler here. Um, if this happened, and then that would put, I believe, Butler and the Grimsley Catholic winner, which is probably Grimsley,
yeah,
but I don't count Catholic out at all. Catholic's one score, a tight one score below Butler. Um,
right.
oh, what a ball team there.
I think you
Then
might see another rematch between Butler Catholics. So
I think it's possible. I think it's possible because I would not be afraid to go with Catholic over Grimsley.
yeah,
I would. I'm. We'll see. If that actually happens,
right.
what things look
So,
like.
Morrisville over Marvin Ridge, Asheville Southeast. I think. Well, I think Asheville wins just because of home field advantage, but those two teams are pretty
Yeah,
close. Huff Northwest Guilford. I'm going to tell you right now, Northwest Guilford scored 38 points against East Forsyth. Uh, I don't think Huff needs to think that they're going to have that game won without a fight. Huff will probably win, but look at that second round possible matchup: Mallard Creek and Huff.
yeah. So the
Uh,
question for Huff's going to be their offense versus Northwest Guilford's defense, and
right,
if they are able to put points on the board, then I don't think that game will be close. If Huff can score, move the ball positively, giving their defense even more to work with, because that defense is one of the best in the state. Um,
right.
but that could be an interesting ball game. Mallard Creek and Providence. That's Mallard Creek's game, I think, and then they're going to be right back fighting each other again. Huff and Mallard Creek in the second round. If this occurred, and the problem is for Huff, they get bounced around now because they lost to Mallard Creek. They get out of that comfortable, conference automatic potentially. That's assuming Mallard Creek beats Chambers, and that kind of bounces them and Chambers around with playing some potentially rougher games in the first round and second round.
Oh, East Forsyth, West Forsyth. That's some good old fashioned hate right there.
Yeah, how about that if that game occurs first round?
Coxville Independence. Oh, that's going to be a good game to go to.
I think that would be an awesome game to go to. I've gotten after watching Cox Mill play Albemarle, I've become a little bit of a Cox Mill fan. This would be a good offensive game to watch.
Right.
I think you would enjoy watching both of these offenses play.
Heck, Ardrey Kell and Porter Ridge could be a good one.
That'll be at least one of those environment that are good games because they're kind of rivals. Those teams from Union County, Ardrey Kell has more of a kinship with them than they do maybe some of the Charlotte schools.
Right.
Of course, it's the geography. They're kind of down. They're not too far from Weddington. That's a tough game for A.L. Brown in the first round,
right,
if that happened.
Watauga Chambers. That would be interesting to see how Chambers does going up the hill and playing over in Boone.
So my pick would be Chambers. It would be interesting. It could be cold. Watauga's a wonderful place to go watch a ball game. If that occurs, Chambers fans should go. A fantastic environment. I think this is going to be. I think that would be one of those, just as with TCR here, where you've got the foothill teams, the Piedmont teams, these speed teams, going against these mountain teams. I wonder how this game would actually fare.
Oh, I think Watauga beat South Iredell. I don't think South Iredale's too strong this year. Page Reagan, I'd take Reagan over Page.
Okay.
And Weddington all over Alexander Central. I think Weddington, they probably make it easily to the third round, and
they make it to here easily, and then I don't know.
They have to play probably Chambers or Watauga in the third, or it would be probably Chambers in the third round. That would be a good matchup. So we got a lot of fun to deal with, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think they could beat. I think Weddington could beat Chambers. Not saying they will, and not that I would pick them. I would have to wait till that matchup occurred. But out of the teams down here in this bracket, Weddington would be the most likely.
Right.
Page may be next. Page is not a pushover, but so that was my look at let me close that, and Jim, I'm going to comment about what I found to be a problem with keep letting him in and he keeps falling out. It won't let him come on. It keeps dropping him off.
Oh, who is it?
Garrett.
Garrett.
His connection must not be good. I clicked add to stream and it adds him and then it drops him out. Jim, when I was looking at I think it was. Let me go back to that spreadsheet. I won't bring it back up on screen. I'm just going to look at what I saw. It had something to do with either Mallard, wasn't Mallard Creek, may have been Huff or Chambers. But when I was looking at the sorting of it, The RPI did not do them as well as a power ranking would. The RPI, so here's a problem with RPI. If a coach could really predict what the teams are going to do next season, and a coach could schedule the games he wanted to schedule, there's a lot of advantage for an upper classification school to schedule lower classification schools that are win. So much so that a 4A team playing a 2A team uh,
Right.
with winning records, because it doesn't take into account how strong that 2A team is, that 3A team is, or 1A team. It just takes into account their wins and losses.
That's why I want to have some type of like multiplier. If you play, let's say you're a two-way school and you play, let's say you have five non-conference schedule, five non-conference games. You play two games in two-way, one game in one A, and then two games in three A. You should get a little bit compensated by playing those two three A teams, and something should be taken off a little bit for those one A teams.
But
Um,
a power ranking, a true power ranking, wouldn't need that multiplier.
wouldn't need it. That's right. But I'm talking like
Uh,
if you're doing RPIs like we're doing now.
yeah, with RPIs, we should have some kind of other factor
Yeah.
involved to take into account, because if this stuck around, and who knows, they change the format every year or two here lately. We're getting different iterations of formats, but if this were to stick around, say as long as that uh, championship stuck around,
Right.
then schools would start taking advantage of that RPI. I think some schools would.
Yeah, I think so. If there's a good caveat on it though, right now, a lot of schools are trying to make as much money as they can on football, the gates, and one of the best things to do is to have competitive games. And
Well, true, but when we're talking 4A schools where crowds tend to be mountains excluded, where crowds tend to be not so much the norm,
right,
I could see a 4A school, of course, stepping into Cleveland County playing 2A teams could be deadly for you. But
right.
I could see a Mecklenburg County team saying to a Cleveland County team, "How about we play the game there? We'll play you there. Let's split the gate. I'll give you another home game if you'll split the gate with me. And you won't have to come to Charlotte to play when it's your time."
Right.
Now the problem is going over and playing a Shelby, a Crest, Kings Mountain, a Burns, playing any of those programs is like playing the 4A teams here. The only thing is she will be playing teams that ultimately will have winning records. Um,
Now, how about like Gardner Webb football? Do they have a field that's on campus or anything like that, or that's near
Gardner
Shelby,
Webb.
isn't it?
Yeah, Gardner Webb's at Bowling Springs, which is north of Shelby.
Okay.
Um, so Limestone, which is also up near there, they play at Gaffney High School. Gardner Webb, I think they do. I don't know. I've not
Wouldn't it
been
be
to.
cool if you had some type of like have a double header, maybe a Friday, Saturday, four games, two games on Friday, two games on Saturday, and have it between Mecklenburg and Cleveland County schools. Have all four Cleveland County schools play against four Mecklenburg County schools. You could have a lot of fun right there.
I agree. So Garrett, if you can hear me, I'm trying to add you, but it won't. The stream won't add you. It adds you and then it drops you out.
There he is. Well, he was there.
Let's see here. Try one more time. Maybe he'll stick in.
Let's see here. Speak, Garrett. What's on your mind?
Not much. I'd love to see your projections and seeing what all you had to say about who's where and what all when it comes to the playoffs.
Bill
Uh,
took James Keenan off the projections. He's like, I don't think these RPIs are right. James Keenan's not going to make the playoffs. What do you have to say about that?
you're crazy.
uh,
If it
yeah.
was, if, I'd say, I'd say this though. If we were talking about maybe a couple of years ago, I agree with you. But strangely enough, due to the way they had it scheduled, and the way things looking right now, I can pretty much kind of make it a pretty much a sure lock that they're gonna make the playoffs. Where they going is
Yeah.
is the good question.
Now, does Wallace Rose Hill and East Duplin, did they play this weekend, this
Yeah,
Friday?
they play Friday night.
And that will pretty much decide who wins the conference. Is that correct? Or at least give them whoever wins it is in the driver's seat.
Yes,
James Keenan's not going to beat Wallace Rose Hill, Garrett. You know that, man. You can forget that.
I can pretty much guarantee that's probably possibly gonna happen.
Possibly.
It's always possibly.
But I will say this. Okay, from a statistical standpoint right now, if East Duplin beats Wallace, then East Duplin will win it outright. Straightforward. No cut and dry answer there. But if Wallace beats East Duplin, then there is a slight chance that it could be a three-way tie if James Keenan beats Wallace next Friday night.
Okay. To answer that, there's we're in a square room, okay, 20 by 20 square room, and you have the Easter Bunny in one corner, you have Santa Claus in another corner, you have a victorious James Keenan head coach in another corner, and then a losing James Keenan coach in the other corner. There's $1 million in the middle of the room. He gets it. You know who gets the money, Garrett? It's the losing Garrett. Is the losing James Keenan coach. You know why? The other three is a figment of your imagination.
You're right.
I'm just messing with you, man.
I know, man. It's all good.
I think James Keenan actually has a. I think they match up pretty good against Wallace Rose Hill. To be honest with you, I think they have enough of rush defense.
Well, you know, they held on with East Duplin. Now I saw that East Duplin was that game out there. They both kind of had a lot of miscues in that game, both teams, and I do know that they held on against East Duplin, but I mean, will they give Wallace fits? They might. Now is this gonna be one of those? You wake up that morning and then the next morning you wake up shocked because it was an absolute beatdown. Not on James Keenan's side. If they beat him, it'd be real close. It'd be a real close game.
Your numbers are going to be 1-4. One team's going to have 4-1, and the other team's going to have a 1-4. And I'll let you guess who the team has 41 points and the other team has 14 points.
Yeah, I know.
So let's see here. I'm going to throw up a few of the comments here. I hope you're still around, Bush Todd.
Yeah, Freedom. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, I think you had High Brighton over Freedom, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
I did because I picked High Brighton to win.
You know that
Now,
Northwest Cabarrus team. They're in that 3A conference, that old South Piedmont conference. That conference is not that strong this year. It seems like it gets weaker and weaker.
Let's see here. Huss would beat Irwin, he says. And if you remember, that's the one I was saying that, and you know, I don't know if they play, we'll see. There's
Yeah,
something about playing Piedmont teams. I'm gonna tell you, mountain teams playing Piedmont teams.
yeah. It's a lot of times is location, location, location where that game is going to be.
It's a little complicated, you know.
It had to do with about Owen and Madison, whether if you had to have at least a 500 record in conference, whether to
Yeah,
if you'd be seated with the winners.
right, exactly. I was just gonna say it most certainly is complicated. Not just that, the whole
The
the
whole thing
process
is.
isn't really complicated. You just need to have the data aligned so that you're not having to do so much typing in, which is
Right.
what I would have to do right now.
mm,
Well, guys, I'll tell you what, it is past my time. I need to go and eat a little bit and probably rest up. But Dale, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. Garrett, it's good to see you finally catch up with us. I guess
Yep.
you
a
got
bit.
finished talking to your parole officer and they let you get on the air again.
Exactly.
That's good to
Maybe
see you, brother.
maybe you buy them.
might want to put your projections, Jim, on on the website, on Facebook or something. Because
If
I
I
not
had
love to
ready.
projections, I would do it.
I
My
love to see
my
what you
projection
put up
is my projection right now is it's going to be like 30 degrees tomorrow morning. That's about as far as
Yeah,
my projection
there. Yeah,
goes.
I don't think it's complete enough to put up what I went over.
Yeah.
If
kind
people
of
want
rough
to see it,
drafts.
I'll try to mark it in the. I'll see if I can mark it in the video, at least on YouTube. I can probably. I can put a bookmark to it, and
Well,
people can go
guys,
to it and watch it.
it's good catching up with you guys. I'm gonna jump
Yep.
off here.
All right.
Time for
All right,
me to
man.
go too.
All
Everybody
right.
have a good evening.
All
All
right,
right,
guys. Welcome.
everybody.
All right. If not, guys, this has been Jim, Dale, and Garrett with Carolina Varsity, and thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
All right. Appreciate it, everybody. See y'all next time.